Alex Highsmith of the Pittsburgh Steelers suffered an ankle injury and was ruled out for that for the remainder of the match today against the Seattle Seahawks. It looks like as of right now, we do have an update on his current status. Steelers coach Mike Tomlin has provided a little bit of insight on this, saying that Highsmith unfortunately has suffered a high ankle sprain and he can miss anywhere from about 4 to 6 weeks. High ankle sprains differ from traditional ankle sprains in that they're going to affect the ligaments that are slightly above the ankle joint. So this is why they are called high ankle sprains versus ankle sprains. And they tend to linger for longer than a traditional ankle sprain for a number of different reasons, but the structures that are affected in this help prevent separation from the tibia and fibula bones, which I'll elaborate on in a moment. So with today's video, what I want to do is I want to talk about the anatomical structures that are involved in high ankle sprains, compare this to what we would classify or think of as a traditional ankle sprain, and talk about the typical timeline to return as well as the rehab process. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. If you're not familiar with me, I am Nick Gallo and I'm a doctor of physical therapy. And with my channel, I take a look at sports injuries and I try to explain them so that they are a little bit easier to understand. I'll also talk about the specific relevant anatomy for those injuries and describe and go into detail on the physical therapy process. If you enjoy this sort of content and you want to see more of it, please hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel because I will be making more of these videos in the future regarding sports injuries, rehabilitation, and other physical therapy related content. Also, if you yourself have suffered a high ankle sprain, go ahead and comment in the comment section below. So typically what I like to do is I like to look at the injury replay for specific injuries. However, in this case, I was unable to find an injury video for Alex Highsmith. So if you happen to find one, please go ahead and link it in the comment section. Here I have a model of the foot and ankle. And so the ankle joint is formed by two long bones that are located in the lower leg. The first one being this tibia bone, also known as the shin bone, that's going to come down and form the inside portion of the ankle, also known as the medial malleolus. Then as we go towards the outside here, we have the fibula bone that's going to come down and form the outside portion of the ankle, also known as the lateral malleolus. And then as we go inside the ankle joint here, this is our talus bone. Since we lack an injury replay video here for this one, let's talk about the traditional mechanism of injury for a high ankle sprain. Basically, what's going to happen is a person is going to be having their foot in an externally rotated position, and they're going to get a lot of twisting, and you can see that shearing force that as I am going to externally rotate the foot here, that talus bone wants to separate the fibula and the tibia. And when it's doing this, it's going to stress those high ankle ligaments. There are a couple of them. The first one is known as the anterior inferior tibiofibular ligament. So anterior meaning it's on the front of the leg, inferior meaning it's on the lower portion of the leg, tibiofibular because it's going to attach the tibia and fibula bones. Then as we flip the model to the back here, we have the posterior inferior tibiofibular ligament. Once again, posterior, this time meaning back, inferior meaning lower, and tibiofibular because it is also attaching the tibia and fibula bones. So we definitely know that anytime somebody is going to be diagnosed with a high ankle sprain, they're usually going to affect one or both of those high ankle ligaments. It can also affect a structure that is in between the full length of the tibia and fibula bones, and this is known as the interosseous membrane. This is going to have the same exact function as the high ankle ligaments, and it's going to help prevent separation of the tibia and fibula bones. But as a person is going to go through a lot of external rotation force at the foot and ankle, depending on the severity of it and the amount of force, it can also affect that interosseous membrane going further up the leg. Let's talk about why a high ankle sprain is going to differ from a traditional ankle sprain. So I just explained that anytime we're getting an external rotation force going through that leg there, that's going to lead to a mechanism that's going to affect the high ankle ligaments. When we think of a traditional ankle sprain, a lot of people are going to think about rolling their foot inwards, typically like they would do when they are essentially missing the bottom of a stair. Maybe they've come down awkwardly when they're rebounding in basketball, something like that, where they're going to be rolling the ankle inwards. Doing this puts the foot in a lot of inversion, and you can see as I do this to an extent on the model here that wants to separate all of the structures that are located laterally. And there are 3 lateral ligaments that contribute to lateral ankle instability. So basically the mechanism and the direction is going to differ greatly compared to a high ankle sprain. Sometimes people are going to have an eversion ankle sprain where the foot is going to be in eversion and rotating outward like so. This is going to stress the medial ankle ligaments, which once again, they're going to contribute to ankle stability, this time on the medial or inside portion. So based on the injury mechanism, we can infer what structure is being affected. In this case, we already know that Mike Tomlin has come out and said that it's a high ankle sprain. So most likely that injury mechanism involves some sort of rotational force going through the foot that's going to affect either those high ankle ligaments and or the interosseous membrane. Let's talk about why a high ankle sprain usually is more severe and takes longer to heal than a traditional ankle sprain. First of all, the rotational force that's going to go through the lower leg is going to provide a shearing force that is going to go through those high ankle ligaments and that interosseous membrane. Once again, these ligaments and that interosseous membrane provide a major function in the lower leg in that any sort of separation from the tibia and the fibula are going to be prevented by this. So if there is any sort of tearing when it comes to these structures or inflammation, it's going to be extremely painful and extremely limiting versus if somebody gets a traditional inversion ankle sprain, they're just going to be weaker and a little bit more unstable on the lateral portion, whereas when it comes to a high ankle sprain, the entire lower leg is going to be unstable. There are a couple tests that we can do if we think somebody has suffered a high ankle sprain. The first one to essentially rule in any sort of injury to those high ankle ligaments specifically, what we're going to do is we're going to take the person's foot and we're going to do just like the mechanism of injury. We're going to externally rotate the foot and we're going to see if this elicits any pain and or if we feel any instability versus the unaffected leg. If we do this and a person is going to point to where either of those ligaments are located, this makes us think that they have suffered a high ankle sprain. There's one other thing we can do to determine if that interosseous membrane is involved, and basically what we're going to do, it's called a squeeze test. We're going to squeeze that affected area of the leg and go further up. If it is painful as it goes up there as well, then that makes us think that the interosseous membrane has been involved. But of course, the gold standard to determine severity is going to be that MRI. When it comes to an MRI, basically what we're going to get here is we're going to get a grade of ligament injury. In a grade 1, this is where we're getting some microscopic tearing of the affected ligament. In a grade 2, we're getting a partial tear. And in a grade 3, this is where we're getting a full rupture, which is going to be the worst case scenario, obviously. When we're talking about time frame to return to sport after a high ankle sprain, usually that grade 1 is going to put somebody out anywhere from about 1 to 2 weeks. In a grade 2, this is where they're going to miss anywhere from about 4 to 6 weeks. And finally, in a grade 3, they're going to miss a period of several months because surgery is required here. Now, in a grade 2, you're going to get some instability of the affected area. This is why it will take over a month usually for a person to come back. In a grade 3, because of a full rupture, you're getting a lot of instability. So basically, everything needs to be confirmed on advanced imaging, and then we need to see how unstable that joint actually is. If a grade 2 is so unstable, but it does not require surgical intervention, sometimes the person is going to be immobilized, whether that be in some sort of a cast or a brace. But if they elect to go non-surgical here, then this is where we're going to follow that acronym RICE, where R stands for rest, I stands for ice, C stands for compression, and E stands for elevation. We want to do this as much as possible in the inflammatory phase. Usually lasts anywhere from about 7 to 10 days. And once we're out of that, then we can start working on range of motion and slowly start to include strengthening, as long as they have clearance from the surgeon to the point where we know that we can push them, but we are not doing any more damage to the affected area. Because Mike Tomlin has already said Alex Highsmith may miss about 4 to 6 weeks, It sounds like his injury is consistent with a grade 2. Now, I don't have official MRI results and I have not examined him, but based on the time frame and the fact that they've already come out and said it's a high ankle sprain, sounds like a grade 2. Very good news that it hasn't come out that he's going to require surgery, so he may have a little bit of instability, but it may not be to the grade that it's going to require any sort of invasive surgical intervention, which of course would put him out for even longer. If I happen to hear any updates regarding Alex Highsmith's case, I'll be sure to update everybody in the comment section, but it looks like as of right now, that's all we have. So it looks like he has suffered a grade 2, so not the best case scenario, but certainly not the worst. So we wish Alex Highsmith the best of luck moving forward with his recovery process. Once again, if I hear any updates regarding the specific rehab that he has to endure, I'll be sure to update everybody on that too. Thank you so much again for tuning into my video today. If you enjoy this sort of content, I'm going to go ahead and link one of my playlists so that you can watch some of the injuries that I've talked about in the past. Thank you so much again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.